right. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Influential Nonprofit. You know me, I'm Marianne. I work with nonprofit leaders to master the art of influence so they can raise more money without feeling rejected, ineffective, or pushy, because who wants to feel like that? And I have my new friend, Richie Kendall, here today with Goodworld. And we're going to talk all about the future of philanthropy, creating inclusive philanthropy, and really, really cool stuff. And I already know we're going to be best friends by the end of this conversation because I like everything you have to say. Richie is a visionary business leader and storyteller, and he envisions a world powered by generosity, collaboration, and compassion, where workplace giving, cause marketing, influencer impact, and next generation philanthropy collide. And I'm setting that intention for the world with you. I think that's beautiful. And your company, Goodworld, provides award-winning nonprofit and corporate social responsibility software to power the social purpose sector. Hi, Richie. Welcome to the Influential Nonprofit.
Great to be here, Marianne. Thanks for having me.
All right. I don't know if you know this, but I always ask the first question. And that question is, tell me something that you're proud of that you don't get to brag about a lot.
Well, it's a new brag. So I gotta chip it in that my wife and I were proud to welcome our first baby son just 4 months ago. And it's not something I, typically bring up, usually with close family and friends, but we are so proud of him. He's almost 5 months now, and he's happy and healthy, and he's going to be a good one.
That's wonderful. Oh, okay. And I think you're gonna be bragging about him a lot, though.
I have no doubt. I think you just created a problem.
It's okay. One of the things I do when I coach people, we do something called brag, gratitude, desire. And so something you want to brag about, something you're grateful for, and something you desire more of. And sometimes people struggle with the brag, like, oh, I don't know, like find anything. There's always something in your life to be proud of, like 100%. There's getting up in the morning, brag about that. That's okay. You can be proud of that. All right. So let's get into this idea of like the future of philanthropy and this integrated, inclusive philanthropy. How do you see that? Like, how do you see that playing out in the nonprofit world? Because there's a lot of things floating around: workplace giving, cause marketing, influencer impact, next generation philanthropy. I think all of those things are important. How do we go about integrating those or taking account for all of those?
Yeah, it's a great question to kick things off. I might just simplify it in terms of trends that I'm sure everyone is pretty familiar with, but it helps to view it in these terms. I think it's fair to say that the business world is looking to become more human, right? You're seeing large brands wanting to humanize their brand, to be more accessible to the younger generation and to be more authentic. At the same time, you have human beings in a way becoming more like brands. The influencer economy, groups of people, organizations working together create a symbolic form to attract their people, to build community, to create revenue and build things. So you have those two trends kind of coming together, which represents this integrative humanist economy that is pulling itself together before our very eyes. So those are the two main trends, and we can kind of dig in on those if you'd like to, or we can kind of kick off the next question.
No, let's dig in. Tell me more.
Yeah. So in terms of this conversation, I think we can also pull together the different ecosystems that exist. Let's just call it the nonprofit economy and ecosystem, and let's call the for-profit community an ecosystem. They have somewhat different motives, but at the end of the day, everyone's dedicated to creating value, to making the world a better place, we hope, And ultimately, in working together to create that better world we all want to exist in. And we know as nonprofiteers that the more we adapt lean business approaches, and the more we adapt creative problem solving, and the more we incorporate first principles into our thinking and how we operate, the more effective we are as organizations. And all of that terminology I've just used is really like, it's almost business language. It's kind of like startup language in a way.
Yeah.
All that being said, if you go to the for-profit side, what they're now incorporating is inclusivity, social impact, mission, long-term corporate social responsibility and environmental impact, governance. All of these terms are what you would typically consider more in the like nonprofit space. These are our values. These are how we represent ourselves and how we treat one another. So those two worlds are coming together. And what my company does is we provide tools at the intersection of those ecosystems, so that the nonprofit world and the quote unquote for-profit world can work together in meaningful ways that drives value for both ecosystems. Is that a helpful description?
Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I talk about this quite a bit. I think this is really important, is the nonprofit, even the word non, like we're described by what we're not. Oh, we're not a profit, which is, it's a tax code. It's a business, right? It's a business, and it just takes its earnings and reinvests it in the business. That's the bit, right? And I feel like, and also it's a very stable business model, which some people don't actually realize, is that the nonprofit is, is very stable and worthwhile, like business model. But we tend to think like, oh, because we're nonprofit. And in a world that values profit, not making one, tends to like mess with our collective self-esteem, as an industry. And I feel like it has a lot of impacts on as far as the scarcity and things like that. And so, but what I can see is like a merging of those two values, which weren't really that disparate anyway, just we came to believe that they were, right? Because I also believe that corporations, like you said, inclusivity and social response, I think that was kind of always part of the conversation. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like now it's just coming with more intention, right? Right? More intention.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that comes back to that first description of, brands becoming more human and humans becoming more like brands. And at the end of the day, I think the world we'd like to see is these different modes of operating, maximizing their missions together and synergizing those missions. But at the end of the day, also learning from one another, because a nonprofit, there's no reason that a nonprofit isn't actually here to sell impact to its community. It's here to offer an experience to its community, and to get them involved in making a difference in the world. And those are all things that come with functions you typically associate with for-profit businesses, like marketing and sales and operations. These are all core aspects of what nonprofits do. And, to the extent we can learn from for-profit models, I think is to the extent nonprofits will reimagine themselves over the next 10 years.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to share something with you. It's kind of an ick of mine. All right. So I don't know if they do this where you're at, like, but in my community, sometimes I'll have like all these business leaders, and they bring in all these nonprofits and they help them. Oh, let me help you with your business, like with your nonprofit. And that there's an assumption there that because you're a for-profit business, then you know more than a nonprofit, and then they need help. I'm not saying nonprofits don't need help or wouldn't benefit from guidance, but the assumption is, right, you're a nonprofit. That means, and I feel like we can learn from each other, that, right? Because that's what you're saying, that businesses are now incorporating some of the values, like, wow, inclusivity, social responsibility, those are things that could really benefit our business, and what we're out to do. I'm not saying this across the board, but I do feel like that is the way forward. And you know what I'm saying? So instead of like, oh, we have to learn from you or teach you how to manage yourself, or like if it, like we said, if nonprofits ran like a business, like what does that mean? Well, they have a plan. Well, I know lots of businesses who run without plans. Like, okay, so let's create a plan. But you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, it was always the assumption, because I've been around a long time, Richie, it was always the assumption that nonprofits should act more like a business. And they're like, well, there's some lessons you can take, but then there's some things that I think are different. And there's some things that a nonprofit could definitely, that a business, a for-profit business could take, because really it's really not that different. It really isn't.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when we think about what nonprofits can learn from business and what business can learn from nonprofits, the most progressive nonprofits, the most effectively run nonprofits, they do function like a business. Like you said, they plan well, they have a strategy, they don't waste money, they are accountable to money that they render in their programs, and they assess and measure qualitative and quantitative metrics, right? I think it's easy to slander the nonprofit community by sort of thinking or saying that it's essentially wasteful, or it's not as accountable, or it's not as transparent. I mean, there's no reason why nonprofits can't be tight run ships that are all about creating returns on impact rather than returns on investment.
Yeah, I love that, return on impact instead of return on investment. That's perfect. Ooh, I want to carve that, cross stitch that, put it on the mantle. I like that. Okay, so I also think that, and I've read a lot of articles that corporate philanthropy and and inclusion, all these things are being driven by the next generation, as far as like the younger millennials, the Gen Z. I don't like, I'm old and crusty, I'm a Gen Xer. Like they're saying we want meaning in our work, right? We want meaning in our work. We want to like feel like we're contributing something good in the world. And in my generation, because I'm in my 50s, so in my generation, you had your job and then you had the meaningful thing you did outside your job. Right. That's what everybody like. Now, not me, because that's not how I operated. I needed meaning in my work. When I graduated college, all my friends got jobs in ad agencies, and I was having a hard time finding a job. And the reason is like, I think I didn't care. I didn't care. Like, I didn't care if you bought, sorry, Dad, because my dad worked for Anheuser-Busch or Miller. I really didn't, in my soul. I didn't. And that's why I got into nonprofit, because I realized I needed meaning in my work. But most people were like, fine, like, yeah, I work for an ad agency and my clients are a roofing contractor or whatever. And they're great with that. They didn't give them meaning, but they liked the work. And then they had meaning on the other side. Now it's all intertwined, right? And I think that is the thing. And that is what's driving this, is to hire, retain really good people. These are the things that they're looking for.
Yeah. And this is a function of the times. I think with the onset of the digital age and the human being able to get the entire world's problems and the sort of meta level crises in their news feeds, it just becomes more urgent. The precipices that we may be on, right? I mean, it's a fact that the ecology of the world is disintegrating in some ways, and we have a responsibility to take care of the planet for future generations. And certainly there is no shortage of grievances across different cultures and geopolitics and between people of different ethnicities, and we want a fairer, more just world as well. And so I think you have these younger generations that are coming into these narratives and really just wanting to integrate and make a better world in everything that they do. And because their lives are so digital at this point and so seamless with these social media platforms, easy modes of communication, easy ways to collaborate with one another, they want work that reflects that world that they are a part of. So it's a big picture, and a lot of change is happening. But at the end of the day, I do believe it's all for the better, and the more organizations can comport to the demands of younger generations, I think the better world we're going to have.
Yeah. So I think, and is that going to be something nonprofits will need to focus on is, understanding the way forward in the digital age. Like how do they then stay in this? How do they stay relevant?
Yes, I believe so. But it's not, there's no panacea. Every nonprofit is different. There are nonprofits that are focused on just grant funds, and some nonprofits that really get the core of their fundraising through major donor strategies. Those strategies do not involve endearing millennial or Gen Zs, and that's fine. But nonprofits that are looking to build mobilization or grassroots communities long term need to be finding ways to involve younger people in whether that's volunteering, or it's helping spread the message, or it's helping change the culture or destigmatize certain issues or rare diseases, or anything else that might be kind of taboo or unknown in the culture. This young generation is incredibly important to get involved.
Yeah. And a lot of times when we're sitting around in the meetings and somebody says, we need younger people. And the question I said, what do you have for them? Like what are you doing? What are you doing to like they just want to wave a wand and get younger people involved. Like, okay, what is there for them? And I want to give you an example. I talk about this group a lot, but I'm working with them really intently right now. It's that my sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, so that's a local organization. And, we know sisters are older women. And what they can do maybe can seem like distant or relevant. The sisters are actually, social justice warriors, LGBT, ministering at the border, a lot of things. And have then been really opening their doors up and creating programming and events that are connecting with younger people. And when I say younger people, I'm not like millennial kind of, but younger than they have, because they are thinking about, okay, so this is a small example, and I think it fits. They have like beer and bites and at the mother house, and one of the sisters plays the accordion, and and people came over and they had beer and they got to sample beer and they had snacks and they met everybody. It's like, okay, what can we do then that is relevant to younger people? And like you said, like some of the things if you're grant focused or major there, you might not have anything. And it really is sort of a pipeline, right? Okay, so how do we build a pipeline? You have to be of value to them before they'll be of value to you. That's one of the principles of influence, which I coach people on. So how can I be of value to them? And then they'll be of value to me. So in my community, the Catholic Church did a huge reorganization and closed a lot of parishes, and people were really looking for a spiritual home. And I said, and the sisters offered themselves up as sort of a spiritual home, as a set of like, we're with you on this, right? We feel the same. There was an opportunity there for some younger people to connect with an older established institution because they created relevancy to that market. And so it's not the wand of like, we need to get younger. Like, okay, what are we offering them? What are we doing for them? Because they want experiential things. They want to feel it. They want to embody it. And it takes some commitment to when they say it takes a commitment and some intention to create that relationship.
Yeah, and it creates a lot of self-awareness too. It can often require a total reassessment of the identity of the organization. What are its values? What is it offering? Because we can pigeonhole an organization like the Catholic Church and say it is irrelevant to the next generation. Well, no, what is the church there to do?
Right.
It is to provide spiritual home, a sense of connection to a higher purpose.
Yes.
And that is relevant to everybody.
Exactly.
So how can you become contextual for a younger generation is the question. They will not respond to maybe more traditional ways of finding that connection, that ritual, whatever it is. So how can you meet them where they are to invite them in?
And that's the key for me for anything, is you meet them where they're at.
Yes.
Because one of the biggest things, and I just did this webinar and I talked about this, is our pain comes from the gap between who people are and who we want them to be. And when I can just meet you where you're at, and if wherever it is, and I'm open to that, then you're going to be open to me, instead of saying, oh no, we want you to like come over here and do this. Like, I'm not ready for that. I don't understand that. And I do feel like you can see what I want to say, the collapse, because you talk about the collaboration, of workplace giving, cause marketing, all this. I almost see it as like a collapse or like a melding.
It's a consolidation. It is
consolidation. That's a great word. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, just with where we sit, we see it every single day. I mean, we are working with organizations, for-profit organizations, brands that have whole entire teams dedicated to how are they going to celebrate Giving Tuesday? How could they provide like % off coupons if people donate or if they volunteer? How can we incentivize people to get involved in the causes that our organization cares about? And then at the same time, you've got nonprofits that are running events with corporate sponsors that are offering auction items to get involved with the companies or that are donated by the companies. And so there's just this crazy exchange of value that can be happening. And we're really happy to be at that intersection because it's a really dynamic and fun place to play.
Yeah. So how do you work with your clients? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, Goodworld, we got our start in 2015 as really an innovator on the bleeding edge of nonprofit fundraising tech. We're the first mover to enable people to round up their everyday purchases for causes. We also invented a tool that allows people to type #donate right into a comment field on social media to make an instant donation. And since 2015, we have grown our technology stack to be a 360 fundraising toolkit for nonprofits, all white label tools, from donation pages and forms to the donor CRM, text to give, event registrations, auctions. And then we've expanded over the last couple of years into that for-profit space. We like to call it for-purpose space, where we power MasterCard's global donations platform. We're working with Unilever and other organizations on how to integrate social impact into their brand initiatives. And we specialize in a form of employee engagement that we're really, proud of and excited about. We call it G-Force internally, and it's essentially the democratization of corporate philanthropy. And what I mean by that is the traditional model of corporate philanthropy looks like a corporation putting aside a charitable budget usually a function of like their overall revenue or EBITDA, and then cutting some checks to some organizations. Usually those are chosen by like leadership, or that are otherwise reflective of the brand or high level partnerships. We believe in a more inclusive future for corporate philanthropy, where that money, instead of getting kind of dictated, actually gets divvied across the brand stakeholders. So imagine that you take $100,000 that would have normally gone to a couple of organizations, and you cut that up into tiny pieces and you give it away to your employees. You give it to customers, on birthdays, new hires, promotions, rewards, performance reviews. Give people, invest in their values by offering them corporate philanthropic dollars that they can then invest in the causes they care about. And what you do when you do that is you create this loyalty cycle in a way. You create a real sense of, this company cares what I care about, and I'm going to make the world better by partnering.
Wow.
So that's just an example of the ways in which we want to flip the script on the way philanthropy.
Yeah, that really does flip the script. Wow. And instead of like, oh, we have this much money in this committee and they decide who gets it. Now it's, hey, for different, right, like new hire, birthday or whatever, hey, here's your corporate, and then you get to decide where to put that money.
Yes. Yeah. And it's great for Giving Tuesday, where everyone might get $100 or $25. It's also great for the holidays when you want to show appreciation, especially when there are families out there that need food on the table. And so it just brings a deeper sense of meaning, connection, why we're here, rather than this kind of stovepiped, separated, strategic form of it's going to often devolve into greenwashing or whitewashing.
Right. One of the things that I don't particularly care for is like when a foundation or company has the money and they're like, and they have 3 organizations, and then they say, come in here and pitch, tell us why we should give to you. And I don't, okay, I'm gonna get into it.
Please.
And because first of all, then it kind of leaves some people out who don't have the ability to maybe get to a right, like some like smaller organizations or whatever, maybe they can't get to the place, they're not making they're of value, they just don't have make a strong pitch, and it kind of pits people against each other in a sense of like, now I have to compete with you, and we're all just here doing good work, in a sense of like, where an organization or a company or a foundation would do like their own work, right? And like do your own work. I'm like, oh, I want you to tell me, like, no, wait, maybe we should go do our own work and see really what we stand for and who aligns best with that, instead of making people, because I really don't believe in like pitching or selling. Anyway, that's just the thing. So, and I love this model because in a sense, like, let's say that foundation would say, or, like a women's foundation, like, hey, we're going to raise this much money and everybody gets like this much to spend. And in a way that is, I love it. And then also in a way, I think that you're getting like smaller pots of money, and people are really want like, hey, I really want to align with the corporation. They have $100,000. They know they're getting that 25. They pick 4 and they're going to get 1. In a sense of, now you kind of open it up, sort of wild westy, and people are like, oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to count on that. And also I also totally get why you would do it that way, right? Because I think it creates more ownership of the causes that people are giving to.
Absolutely. And there's a whole lot of reasons why the corporation or the organization would want to know what people care about and would want to get them to engage in their programming. It's to go off your point about another sort of inversion of motives and logic is kind of the matching concept too. Like like offering a matching gift is kind of like saying we won't give unless you give, right?
Mhm.
Why wouldn't you just invert that and have the company just give money that can be redeemed? And when someone receives that gift, they will feel more compelled to pass it on, to give to someone else, or to chip in on the journey,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So we're just a big believer in reimagining the way corporate philanthropy, but a more decentralized philanthropy can work in the future.
Yeah. I think that's definitely where things are headed, right? And like I said, the great flattening. The word I'm using right now is I'm calling it the great reckoning, which I think we are having right now with a lot of the values around us, right? Like the values around us being like, capitalism, profits, social justice, like a lot of the things. I think this was all pandemic pushed forward. Right? Like, okay, how can we reimagine philanthropy and what does that look like? And so is that, I just wanted to ask one more thing, is that where you really feel like the future of philanthropy is, and is it this collaboration and the collapse and the integration of all of these things?
Yeah, we're having to do two big things simultaneously, and that is understand the world that we're operating in, which is a huge task. I mean, it is an immensely complex world we have built for ourselves, in many ways overly complex. So we have to understand that world, and then the other thing we have to do is, in order to transform it, we, like you said, have to be able to reimagine a future that is aligned with our values. And to the extent that this, I don't want to call it an old model, because it's not an old model. Capitalism has done tremendous things, but we know that there are aspects of human systems that are less humane than we like them to be, and we should be redesigning what we've learned based on where we're going. And I think that there's so many sources of inspiration for this. There's a lot of amazing movements out there. There's a lot of really creative thinking. And so unless you're kind of all in, kind of absorbing the world, and I think you're missing out on being a participant in creating that world we all want to live in.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. This has been such a beautiful, insightful conversation, Richie. Thank you for having this with me. And thank you for, and it's really about bringing these concepts, which can feel sort of high-minded, but you're putting them into practice every day in the work that you do, right?
No, it's such a pleasure, and thank you and your whole community for all of their hard, earnest, thankless work. They're moving money where it needs to go, and
Yep,
they're serving humanity, which is our whole purpose
it
here.
is. It is. Okay. How can people get connected with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, well, goodworldnow.com is our website where you can come check out our product in a demo. You can chat with us directly through the site. I can be reached directly at richie@goodworld.me anytime for any questions. I'll never ignore an earnest question. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Richie
Okay.
Kendall.
And we'll put the links in the show notes for everybody. All right, now I got to shift, but this is always my last question. So
I'm
we're
ready.
we're making a tone change right now. All right, you're in Maine, I'm in St. Louis, but if you ever found yourself in St. Louis or I'm in Maine and we wind up at a karaoke bar, what's your go-to song?
Oh, wow. I'm just Man on Fire by Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros just popped into my head when you asked that question.
I don't know that song.
It's a great song. Everyone should go check it out.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna check it out, and then hopefully, because now everything's digital, they can just download it.
Oh
So
yeah.
Yeah, so it's on. All right, Richie, thank you so much. I appreciate the conversation and the expansion of thought and everything that you are doing to reimagine, philanthropy and nonprofit for the better.
Thanks, Marianne.
You
Keep up
bet. And that's it for this episode of The Influential Nonprofit. I know you have, but in case you haven't, you can go to theinfluentialnonprofit.com and download your Uplevel Your Influence Starter Kit. It's a lot of the cool stuff that I talk about on this podcast. There's a book, there's a guide, there's all kinds of things you can have to help you grow your influence so you can get more of what you need, want, and deserve, and get it more easily and in aligned with your values, which is the biggest thing that I work on and teach is how do you get what you want and stay aligned with your values? And that's the practice of influence. We'll see you next time on The Influential Nonprofit.